Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Football World Championship, home to the industry's most accurate rankings.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, as always, Adam Krautwurst, and with me again, because you can't get us out of the top 10 of the FFWC main event there, is Jack Kohlscheen. We're not leaving. I feel like we're on that Leonardo DiCaprio gift. Like,
That's right.
I'm leaving. I'm not leaving.
Yeah. Wolf of Wall Street. There you go.
That's right, the Wolf of Wall Street. So welcome again, Jack, and we'll talk about that team in a little bit. But what's up, buddy? Happy to have you tonight.
Yeah, just got the kids to bed, set everything up. Good to go. Good to talk football.
Bro, people have no idea. Like, everyone's like, oh, podcast, create, like, listen, if you don't do it full, and even if you do it full time, if you don't do it full time, you don't even putting the kids to 8 seconds before we go live. It's like, don't do your homework. I literally walked in from a 2-hour basketball practice. I'm like eating as the song's playing. I haven't had dinner. Like, it's madness, but I love it. I'm happy to do it for sure. So yeah, man. Before we even get going, what a great weekend for fantasy football. I mean, it was an exciting weekend. Because some weekends you get those awful ones. But this weekend was high scoring. A lot of the guys that we had to play, we talked about last week. Some guys we talked about this week. I know last week we were talking about Keaton Mitchell. He might be the last of the running backs, man. We had to start him in some spots, and I'm getting text messages. Keaton, I'm like, let's go. Keaton Mitchell. It was a fun weekend.
It was. We needed that. There had been kind of some frustrating slates, especially the early afternoon, the past couple of weekends. But to see some real legit shootouts, Detroit Chargers, that was a fantastic game. There's just a number, CJ Stroud doing it again. There's just a lot of exciting games. And even the terrible games were still terribly entertaining. There was some suspense there. So
yeah, for sure. I kicked myself because I picked up, I had the gumption to pick up a lot of Irwin and a lot of Noah Brown, but I didn't start them everywhere. It's like I started Watson over Noah Brown in some spots. I'm like, what a dummy, but I'll learn from my mistake there. But listen, I don't want to get this show started off on the wrong foot, but we already have a question here that I know it's gonna get you off on the wrong foot already, from Daniel. Would you drop JSN for Quentin Johnston in light of the day-to-day injury for Keenan Allen, who was hopeful to play? Listen, those are fighting words around these parts. Jack, our JSN apologist, he's contractually obligated to talk about JSN.
That's right, through fiscal year 2024. So the answer is no, absolutely not. I think the long-term value of JSN and just the entire Seattle Seahawks receiving core is, with the schedule they have between now and the end, there's just too much value to give it up, for potentially 1 week or maybe not anything. This is just Wednesday night. He might just, Keenan Allen actually finished the game this past weekend. This could just be some veteran rest. He could, by the way. Yeah. See, he could come back on limited practice on Friday and still be fine to go. So, also, Quentin Johnston is bad.
Right.
So
that's the problem. Right.
I mean, we'll get to it, but it's going to Jalen Guyton or Stone Smart, or before it's going to Quentin Johnston. So,
but listen, we're not saying he'll always be bad. And I liked him in college but he was a short. They're using him the way that they shouldn't be using him. But anyways, even if, like you said, even if Keenan Allen's out, you might not even want to start Quentin Johnston. The Packers are the 7th worst matchup for fantasy receivers. So it's not even now, granted, there's been some movement there. Obviously, they made a trade with the Bills to send one of their top corners over there and stuff like that. But you still don't want to have to start Quentin Johnston. Long story short, but all right. Yeah. Let's jump in. We want to talk about some utilization this week. Because things are always changing. People are coming back from injuries. Teams are coming off of bye weeks. We want to talk about stuff like that. And speaking of coming back off an injury and on our big FFWC team, World Championship team in the top 10, Kyler Murray returned to action and looked completely healthy. I didn't get to watch a lot of this game. I didn't see a lot of his throws, but man, I turned on the TV and he ran like he just a vintage Kyler Murray, 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, circled all the way back around. And I think that's when you text me, like, Kyler's back. I think when you text me, like, it was like a 45-yard run to gain 20. And he looked like his old self. What did you think?
Yeah, no, it could have been an even bigger day because he threw just a teardrop to Marquise Brown in the end zone, probably a 35-yard pass that was just through the fingertips.
Yeah.
I think the more important thing is not only just the eye test. He's dynamic, athletic self, but the coaching staff seems to agree because they gave him 4 designed runs, not the Clayton Tune tush push runs, but at least 4 designed runs in space, which certainly demonstrates confidence in his recovery and demonstrates that they're going to use him like Kyler that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, 4 designed runs, 17% of the runs, which is in line with what he normally does at 15%. Josh Allen would love for 17% of the team's runs for the Bills. Maybe we'll get into that later. But yeah, Kyler's fine. He's back. I would say you're good to start him. Now we've got Stroud, so we've got decisions every week now between Stroud and Kyler, which is good decisions to have. Who does Arizona have this week? They've
Houston.
Houston. Well, there you go. Speaking of Stroud and
Kyler.
It's going to be right. Yeah. That's right. And that is in Houston, so it's a dome, which is nice. We're not going to worry about the weather. And they're both pretty neutral matchups. So I think, and Nico Collins is back this week. And the weapons go from again, I'm always shooting off topic. I just love talking ball. But the Houston weapons are getting better now too. You got Noah Brown looks good. Nico Collins is back. Tank Dowell, the whole thing there. So, and you know what? Let's keep going on that because I'd love to pick your brain on stuff. Devin Singletary. I mean, we weren't planning on talking about him tonight, but we're at Houston is that he's like fits the offense better for what they like to do there, which is crazy because in Buffalo he was like, he was like nothing at all. But he certainly is a decent pass catcher. I'm wondering if he's the number one guy there, even when Pierce gets back. What do you think?
Well, the Pierce injury certainly opened the door. And then prior to that, Pierce wasn't exactly standing out. He was struggling. And if I remember right, it kind of broke down to almost a 50-50 timeshare prior to the injury.
Yes.
So I think this is like the classic case of, fantasy bias versus real world usage. We want to go for the younger, more explosive rookie or, in this case, second year wide or running back. Whereas I think Devin Singletary's advantage is that he is good enough at most things.
Yes.
He doesn't have to be, particularly dynamic in one area.
Blocking,
spikes.
Receiving.
Right.
Yeah.
He can just be out there and things won't go too poorly, which, a lot of coaches, value that reliability. So I can certainly see, a return to the 50-50 timeshare, but I could see Singletary getting a lot more of the high value touches and Pierce just kind of eating the up the middle runs when they have them, which in the Houston offense are becoming, less and less each week.
Yes, you have to remember the coach comes from San Francisco outside zone scheme, and they're saying Singletary is just a better outside zone scheme runner. I mean, Dameon Pierce it looks like everything's so hard for him. Like every carry, he's got to shed 5 tackles and stuff like that, whereas it just looks easier for Singletary. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. If you have Singletary, hopefully they keep Pierce out for another week or so. To kind of, you can throw him back in the starting lineup. But all right, moving on to a running back that I was super high on in the offseason. This was very intriguing for me to see coming off the David Montgomery injury and the bye week. But Gibbs is a guy that I'm so overweight on. I love his talent. I'm walking around Vegas with his jersey on, like opening night, like let's go. And the only, I wore it all night long. We went out to the bars after in Vegas, and everyone's like, "Go Lions!" I'm like, I don't care about the Lions. Go Gibbs. But by the way, that feels like 10 years ago. By the way, when we were
no kidding. You age about it's like dog years or something with fantasy football season.
That's right. But Gibbs was not. Gibbs it was a 50-50 split essentially with Gibbs and Montgomery, which is normally you'd be like, oh, that stinks. But from where he was with Montgomery, and the split looks like it's every other drive. It looks like they're just rotating drives. So you talk about Gibbs got 2 carries inside. He scored 2 touchdowns from inside the 5. He's not their goal line back. He's just their back for that drive. And it kind of sounds gross to do it that way. But listen, whatever gets him to 50% of all that work, and I'm fine with, you know what I mean? Because we were drafting him based thinking that he'd be like a 35% carry guy, touch guy. If you're going to get 50%, I'll take it.
Right. I was expecting the more full-throated Gibbs propaganda coming from you. The Gibbs is taking over the backfield. This is going to be mostly Gibbs, because I was going to push back because some people have made that claim this week, and I think the utilization does get a little skewed because of the 74-yard touchdown run that David Montgomery had. So it certainly inflates the Gibbs proportion because that was just one play instead of multiple snaps and targets on route run and things like that. The other pushback is that I saw an interview from Gibbs today on another podcast, not on this one, not yet.
Well, we got it. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, mystery guest. And Gibbs said on the podcast that David Montgomery was actually going to be subbed in for the 1-yard touchdown run.
He's sending him back out there.
And then he he wanted to give it to him so that he could have it. So, like you said,
that's great to see.
Yeah. I think this is a case of, I think people got a little bit of sticker shock or a little bit of sudden change coming back and not having David Montgomery be just the bell cow with Gibbs as the, kind of third down style back. I think it's going to be 50-50, but I also think it's going to be one of those where neither owner is disappointed.
That's it. Listen, at the beginning of the year, I was super high on Gibbs, and then I was devastated for weeks, right? And then all of a sudden Montgomery goes out and Gibbs is phenomenal. So the fact that I was expecting devastation again, to be honest with you. I was starting him obviously, but the fact that I got 50-50 split, I'll take
That's
it.
The trauma. That's the trauma. You were defending yourself, but
that's the trauma. That's right. I was in shock. So I'll take it for sure. And they're both excellent at what they do. Gibbs is super explosive. I really like the Lions offense, man. And like you said, the dome games at the end of the year for a team like them, they could be a
great offensive line.
Everything.
They have reason to play for these games. This is their run. So
coaching, for sure. So arrow pointing up for Gibbs and Montgomery moving forward. But a guy that we talked a lot about last week in our free agent waiver wire session, a guy that I've been pretty high on, not from my own kind of takes, but my co-host from my other podcast, the Deep End, Mike Shope, was very high on him early on. So I had a lot of Keaton Mitchell already. And you recommended, hey, listen, this might be the last chance you get at a back with really good opportunity on a really good offense and something that can, so spend your fab dollars. He didn't get the touches we were hoping for. He dropped a long touchdown pass, but he gets that touchdown. Now Harbaugh's talking about giving him more touches. What do you think about Keaton Mitchell?
See, he dropped that long touchdown pass, but the burying the lead of he was getting deep red zone targets as a running back and not necessarily, a sizable one at that. So I think they were trying to use him in creative ways and not, kind of gadget ways, but actually incorporating him into the flow of their offense. They want to do that even more. And to me, it seems like he 2/3 took the Justice Hill role this past week and the full takeover. I'm expecting this upcoming week with Harbaugh saying they want to get him even more involved.
And I'm wondering too, this might be galaxy braining it, but he was coming off a hamstring, right? I know he was getting the touches early on. He was the guy outside of Gus Edwards gets the goal line stuff, obviously, but maybe, they knew they had a Thursday night game coming up, a big game against the Bengals. We were like, hey, let's play Justice Hill. Let's ease off Keaton Mitchell with the hamstring and let's save him or save somebody for this Thursday night game. And then Harbaugh comes out and says, hey, we're gonna use him more moving forward. So, maybe that again, it's a tough, and maybe we'll talk about that during our start sit. It's a tough guy to be like, man, after only 22% of the snap share on a Thursday night game, can I trust this guy as my flex option? I think it really depends on your other option. Maybe even sometimes it's an RB2 option. I mean, you got Jonathan Taylor out, you got a couple other players out this week with bye weeks and stuff. So we'll see. We can talk about that moving forward, but it's a very interesting, it's a very gutsy kind of play call.
And I think compared to what we were just talking about, that running back duo in Detroit, if you squint, the Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell combination could be like a discount David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, very similar in terms of ability, explosiveness, the size relative to one another, and kind of the roles they play in those offenses. And they're both in great quality offenses that are going the distance. So I could see a similar sort of situation shaking out in Baltimore. Again, everybody's happy except for if you own Justice Hill or Craig Reynolds. So.
Right. That's right. But moving on to another running back and a backfield that, hey, like when I said I wanted to talk about James Conner, that was before we got the Michael Carter signing there now in the last couple of hours. What do we think about that? I mean, Conner reclaimed it, got the number one back role right out of the gate, which is what we were hoping for, which is what we wanted to see. He didn't get a lot of the passing down work that we're used to seeing, but we would expect a little bit more of that going forward. Also, familiarity with Kyler Murray and then the offense. So it was good. It was good from what we saw. But are you worried about? Does Michael Carter signing mean anything to you? I mean, he's very quick. Like he gets put on waivers and bang, the Cardinals pick him right up.
Yeah, I think this is not going to be the same James Conner that we saw, especially last year and then early this season in sort of that bell cow workhorse doing, a little bit of everything role. And I think the reason for that is, we've got Kyler back. So I think there's less of an emphasis on just running the ball in order to hide whatever quarterback you're trying to use last year or this year. You've also got a much more developed offense that's being used a lot more effectively in the passing game so that James Conner doesn't have to be targeted as often. Trey McBride has really started to come online. They had a much better usage for Rondale Moore in week 10 in terms of getting target share deeper downfield. Marquise Brown is still there. Michael Wilson is a great boundary receiver, big bodied guy. So they have, I think, more weapons that have come further along either earlier in this season or compared to last season. So I would expect fewer targets to running backs overall. Again, also Kyler has the ability to scramble to extend plays instead of using checkdowns. So I would expect fewer overall, but a more efficient offense that is getting into the red zone more often. And so a more volatile touchdown upside week to week. So a little bit more boom bust of a profile compared to kind of the median outcome, but still somebody that's going to help, especially with the state of running back.
Yeah. And we'll get into some dumpster diving here in a minute, but I might be adding Michael Carter to that mix because I think that, they signed him for he's a really good pass catching running, look really good at that role. And if they still want that and they don't want to get Conner banged up because he's always hurt, I think he'd be a nice piece for them. And if you got him on your fantasy team, I would not cut him. All right, moving on to the Seattle backfield, a backfield that's kind of been flip-flopping and has people frustrated if you really invested kind of heavily in Kenneth Walker. You're excited if you have Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet took all the long down and distance. He took the 2-minute snaps. Kenneth Walker took the early down work. I mean, Walker still looks great, but when you're going to lose all that work, and Pete Carroll just freaking loves Zach Charbonnet. He just talks about any chance he can get. You're just not getting those upside smash games. I mean, Walker was getting away with it early in the year because he was scoring twice every game from the 2-yard line, the 3-yard line. Like now, when those start to disappear, and you're not getting the pass down work, there's not much left there. Yeah,
and I think Kenneth Walker's profile always was this very boom, but he was the Kadarius Toney of running backs to a degree. Like it was just marginal for however many attempts, and then one of them breaking free for 45 yards. That's just sort of his game. And I think as the Seahawks offense is functioning better because their offensive line is improving, JSN continues to develop, and they're getting a much better schedule. I think there's going to be more of an emphasis on the running game by Pete Carroll to preserve leads. And that's Charbonnet. He kind of got pigeonholed as more of a pass catching back, but he's also just good. He's consistent in his success rate and is able to have some burst and get the yardage they need to burn clock and to preserve leads. Whereas Kenneth Walker could, stop drives just as easily as he could finish them. Right.
Yeah, no, those are good points. And like, they're not like you said, the schedule is easy. It's getting easier for the pass game. And so like Kenneth Walker's just not able to eat, because I'm looking at the strength of the schedule. They don't have one easy game left the rest of the year, and they have 4 really hard ones. And that doesn't even include San Francisco twice. They're not even considered like a super hard one, but like they certainly can be. So like he's got a very tough schedule down the stretch. I don't see them being able to close out games against San Francisco twice, Dallas, Philly. It's gonna be tough for him to really smash, and that's kind of what you're looking for down the stretch here. So I think if you're heavily invested in Walker, I wouldn't be too excited. But again, one injury to Walker or Charbonnet, and the other guy is going to smash. So
absolutely,
yeah, exactly. All right, moving on to the last. Actually, that was the last one of our kind of guys we were going to go over here for utilization. And now we're going to move on to some dumpster diving stuff. And you got a beautiful name right off the top here, coming out of the bye week. Talk to me about Justin Watson as a guy that you want to grab off the scrap heap here for waivers this week.
So I got to ask, are you a conspiracy theory guy, Adam? Are
Absolutely.
you like did we land on the moon? Was there one shooter of Kennedy? Like,
my internet drops 3 times a day. There's no way we landed on the moon 70 years ago. Okay.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Reason being, I think if you listen to the argument I'm about to give to Justin Watson, it's going to sound conspiracy theory-esque in parts. I'm going to be asking a lot of what ifs, but this is what I want to get on tape. Now, like, we put this in the dumpster diving segment for a reason.
Yes.
This is a desperation play, but of all of them, I think it's interesting because in week 9, before the Chiefs bye, Sky Moore was reduced to only 29% of routes, which is a huge decrease week to week in his role. Who saw the biggest uptake? It was not Rashee Rice. It was Justin Watson. In week 9, he had a season high 71% of routes. His next highest was 60% in week 4. So again, this is a substantial, not accidental increase in the routes that he ran. And he ran more routes than any other Chiefs receiver in week 9. He was targeted on 20% of those routes. That was his second highest rate of the season, only to week 1 and 25%. He had 19% target share. This was a season high. He was beating out his week 1 rate by 8%, and he led all Kansas City wide receivers in target share. We know Kansas City has been rotating their wide receivers all season. They've been rotating all their wide receivers since last season. It's what they've been doing, and it's been a nightmare. But here's the tinfoil hat time.
Yes.
What if Andy Reid has finally pulled the plug on the Sky Moore experiment? This has failed. We're done with this. This is just a waste of routes. The bye week is always the time that we look for teams to make scheme adjustments so that they have the time to install those adjustments. And who better to spring a scheme adjustment on than the Philadelphia Eagles, their Super Bowl rivals, and also the second best matchup for fantasy football wide receivers at this point. So Justin Watson, 47% of Kansas City's air yards in week 9. 47% of Kansas City's air yards in week 9. And he has over the course of the season a 1.51 yards per route run, which is modest, but it's surprisingly better than Jacoby Myers, Devonta Smith, Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton. And when it comes to separation, it's not even close on the Chiefs receivers. It's Justin Watson by a mile. So all that being said, you could do a whole lot worse. And I'm pretty confident that even as persuasive as I can be, he's not only on your waiver wire, but you can probably get him for $1.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic matchup this particular week. And there is the chance that if the trend continues and they consolidate their wide receiver tree, that he could be a receiver down the stretch to flex in those important weeks to get to the playoffs. And then once you're there.
Yeah, super interesting. Justin Watson on the clock. It's interesting. And the problem that I have doing stuff like that, not that you're not right, is at this time of year, finding the roster space in a lot of these teams. Like, who am I going to drop? Like, because I'm trying to get 2 defenses primed for the playoff run. And the great thing about FFWC is you only need 1 kicker because it's team kicker. So as long as they don't have a bye week, you're good there. But it's finding the players. Am I dropping Josh Kelly? Am I dropping, Will Levis? How many quarterbacks am I carrying? Like, who can I drop for him? I love that idea for like a 1 week DFS play. Have him make you a ton of money this week in DFS as a free scratch off.
You've uncovered though my reverse psyop to get people to drop the Kansas City defense this week.
Right,
so
right. Great idea.
Yeah.
I love it.
Next level.
Listen, Kansas City defense is already on waivers this week because they're coming off a bye. I was surprised at how many spots the Kansas City defense was. Speaking of dumpster diving, but yeah, no, that's all great stuff. And listen, something's got to happen coming out of that bye week. I personally think it's going to be Jerick McKinnon. I think he's going to be the guy that they start to get going more. He scored going into the bye week on a reception. Like, he's the guy who smashed last year, won a ton of people money down the stretch. So he's the guy that I'm leaning on, but he's rostered everywhere. Like, you can't go get Jerick McKinnon. So Justin Watson is your number 1 dumpster.
That's
dive.
The Hail Mary dumpster dive. Of the rest of season.
All right, who else you got? Who's number 2 on your list?
So we were talking a little Quentin Johnston earlier. So if I'm going to have that take on Quentin Johnston, I should probably assume the targets are going somewhere. So the argument for Jalen Guyton is as follows.
Yes.
Week number 1, week 10, he ran 85% of routes. That was the exact same as Quentin Johnston. And he had a 15% target share, which was more than Quentin Johnston. 15, not winning you any weeks on its own, but still a valuable piece, especially when you consider number 2, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett, Donald Parham all didn't practice today with new injuries. Now, I think Keenan Allen's likely to come back, but there's still in the range of outcomes that he sits for a week, and Gerald Everett has been spotty at best. Donald Parham is the replacement to that. So it has to go somewhere because number 3, Justin Herbert, is going to throw the ball at or above league average. We could just take that as a given in this upcoming matchup. And it turns out that Quentin Johnston is not good. And that's not to say that he's not good as a human being or even as a player with potential. But I think at this point in his career and what they're asking him to do, with Mike Williams getting injured and now all of a sudden, go be Mike Williams. I don't think that was his game and he wasn't ready. I think they could use him in a different role, but he's not a wide receiver 1 in this offense. So neither is Jalen Guyton, but the ball has to go somewhere. And as far as likelihood of, succeeding, I think Guyton's the pick, at least in week 10. And Guyton's dumpster diving purposes.
That's right. And Guyton's flashed in the past. Like, he's scored, before for them. He's been there for a couple of years now. I like the Guyton pick a lot. He's a guy that's available everywhere on waivers, and he's a guy that I've been putting little waiver claims on. And plus, he could be a guy, what's his name is out for 4 weeks.
Josh Palmer.
Palmer's out, so Guyton could have a role for 3 more weeks. You know what I mean? So that's why I like the Guyton ad.
Yeah, sure. I mean I'm not sure if they can lose anyone else. Like if it is possible, like Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen injured, Gerald Everett, Donald Parham. Like,
I know it sounds like the Bills' defense.
It has to go to him eventually. So
that's right. But no, I definitely like that too. Their schedule is a little bit tough coming up, but it's Herbert. They're going to be flinging the rock all over the place. All right, who's your number 3 in your last one here?
Yep, one more ugly one, but we actually did talk this guy a little bit last week in our preparing for the playoff segment. Rashad Bateman, Baltimore. So Last week, he ran a season-high 77% of routes. He saw a season-high 20% of targets. He saw 25% of Baltimore's air yards, which was his second highest rate of the season. And like we talked about last week, Baltimore wide receivers have the second best strength of schedule from weeks 15 to 17. They've got those plus matchups against Jacksonville, San Francisco, and Miami. Those defenses that sound harder, but are actually pretty good to attack in the secondary. So, this is one of those, again, unsettled receiver rooms. It's been shifting around all season. Mark Andrews is the constant, but we know this offense is going places. We know it's going to make a deep run. Somebody is going to have to step up. Odell Beckham Jr. has been having injury problems, on and off the field. Now, Rashad Bateman is not necessarily the saint of good health, but at this point, he seems to be not only back on the field, but back on the field to the point where they're increasing his usage and able to get him out there more often. So maybe this is what the full recovery looks like. It could very easily be him. It might not, but it's a shot at a wide receiver 1 or 2 for that team on one of the best offenses in the league right now.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a former first-round pick. He's 3 years into his career. Like, he's flashed brilliantly for them, for that team. I mean, again, I know it's a new offensive coordinator, and maybe he's out there running wind sprints, but I still believe in the talent. I loved him coming out of college. He was great as a rookie. He was great as a second-year player, just career kind of derailed by injury. If he's healthy, certainly has a shot. And the schedule is fantastic down the stretch for the receivers too. So no, I definitely like that. He's available in a lot of leagues too. But I have to admit, him and like Treylon Burks are like the guys that like are right on my like cut list. They're like players 19 and 20. Like, do I want to add? If I want to add a player, like usually they're the one that's like, hey, so I'm not dropping a running back because I never drop running backs. Somebody's got to go, and usually it's one of them.
Yeah. I think the first two, Watson and Guyton are kind of the flyers that you pick up and see how they do after this week and cut them otherwise. And like you said, Rashad Bateman available in a lot of leagues, but he's also kind of in the roster bubble on the rest of them. So, if you got him and you considering dropping him for some attractive option this week, it's actually somebody that I would say hold on for one more week, see if this usage sticks, and make your decision then, but keep him for one more week.
And go from there for sure. Yeah. All right. The one guy that I have who's a player that I've had before, he's flashed before. And like I said, I never drop running backs. I'm always adding running backs. Dearness Johnson, speaking of usage, I mean, where is Tank Bigsby? Where have you gone? He was one of my like most drafted players in the offseason was Bigsby. All the coach speak and all the stuff coming out of Jacksonville. And it was one of the reasons why I was kind of off ETN because people were like, man, Bigsby might just outplay ETN for that starting role. Not all the starting role, but, work his way into a timeshare, like a Jalen Warren type situation. That hasn't happened. Bigsby has been completely irrelevant. But Dearness Johnson comes in there, gets a 21% snap share, 12 snaps, 3 carries, 2 targets. And so he gets involved more, and all of that was before Bigsby even gets in the game for this. So I think he's a guy, again, it's a dumpster dive, whatever, but man, you always want to be adding running backs because if ETN does go down, someone's got to have to take that role. And if it is Dearness, like if it is him, you're set, you're gold. You got an RB2 there in that situation that you can get right now. He's not rostered anywhere. But I think this week with the Dearness Johnson starting, and he's been in this league a couple of years and has shown like he was a workhorse for the Browns.
He stood in for Nick Chubb for a few weeks and delivered some powerful fantasy football performances as well.
Exactly. So I think he's a guy that I think if you got room or if you want to cut a running back for a running back, he might be the guy that you can do it for.
Yeah, and just to riff on or hate a little bit more on Tank Bigsby because man, like I think I heard that he's the worst graded running back in the league by PFF, and I think it's because like it's not just that he's not being used very often. He's like it's not inefficiency, it's like reverse efficiency. Every time he's on the field, it's like catastrophic. Like tipped the ball last week that led to an interception. He's fumbling. He's like turning the ball over in the end zone. Like it's all these every time just a catastrophic error. And I think we've seen this a couple times during the season where D'Ernest Johnson's snaps start to go up and, Tank Bigsby has came back up before, and then there's some catastrophic error and it plummets back down again. I think eventually Jacksonville is going to be in some must-win games for their playoff picture, and they're not going to be able to just give him some more time and let him play through it. They're going to have to go with the person who's been a known quantity and a performer in high leverage situations before, and that's been D'Ernest Johnson. Yeah,
for sure. So I think I like that pickup. We have a question here from Daniel again. What are our thoughts on Christian Watson and Jerry Jeudy? What do I do with them? And man, the Jeudy question doesn't bother me as much because I don't have much Jerry Jeudy. As much as I like the player, I just wasn't in on the Broncos offense. Christian Watson, though, I just was blindly taking him as a year 2 breakout. I didn't think Jordan Love was going to be this kind of bad, like just inefficient, and just the offense looks so bad. I think Christian Watson, 48% completion percentage to him, or 48% catchable passes. I'll look that
48% up. 48% completion.
There you go. It's just he's not. The ball isn't anywhere near him, or he's dropping it, or they're just not on the same page. Like I know. Listen, I know Rodgers was there last year. Rodgers is a Hall of Famer, MVP. But what happened to these 10-yard crossing routes that the guy can just take to the house? There's none of that. It's all like throwing up a prayer. Underthrowing. I mean, he's made some crazy the catch he got hurt on 2 weeks ago was an insane catch. But again, it was a bad pass. Meanwhile, it feels like he's always clicking with Jaden Reed or, all the other guys there. Dobbs is getting they seem to be connecting. So I don't know what's going on there with Christian Watson. What do you think?
I mean, it's one of those where you can't really understand the underlying driver. Like, is it Jordan Love? Is it Christian Watson? At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, though, because that connection between the two of them, that is the worst quarterback wide receiver connection on that team. When you look at passer rating and just all of the peripheral statistics, and I don't know whose fault it is, but there's clearly they are not on the same page, Jordan Love and Christian Watson. And I think this is going to be another one of those situations where eventually you just can't try to force feed it anymore, and you have to go with what works. And right now that's Dobbs and that's Reed. And also Musgrave has been playing a deeper role than you'd traditionally see with a tight end. There's been, some deep bombs to Musgrave, which I think they're both trying out as an alternative to Christian Watson and certainly eating into some of those routes that he was so successful in last season.
And listen, the scary thing about I wanted to start Noah Brown last week in a bunch of spots over Watson 2 or 3. I mean, I did get enough Noah Brown in, but the thing that scares me about Watson is, man, he can make you pay. You don't start him 1 week, he can make you pay on 4 targets. He could go 3 for 170 and 3, and it's just like, oh my God, like that's the scary part about
and I guess
a guy like Watson.
And I guess then that's exactly the reason why, in response to Daniel's question, like, what do you do with them? You let him burn a hole on your bench until you get at least a sign of life, because you are going to hate yourself even more if you drop him now and then in 2 weeks he starts to finally break out, than if you just let him eat up that 20th spot. That'll hurt, but not near as bad. Right,
exactly. I mean, we might as well. Who did the Packers have this week? Did we already talk about this? I think we did.
Chargers,
that's right. Okay. Yeah, Packers, Chargers. Perfect.
So this would be a great week. This would be a great week for him to turn it on.
That's right. So. And that's what I'm looking at. So, this week, we're talking about what to do with Christian Watson. I mean, some of the rankings he's around like Curtis Samuel, Michael Wilson, like projection models, right? George Pickens, even like Jacoby Myers is super low. That's interesting. What do you we're talking about starts and sits, and Jacoby Myers was a wide receiver 2 all year long. He gets the Miami Dolphins this week. What do you think about Jacoby Myers? Is it just AOC stinks and can't? I mean, he can't even get a good game out of Devontae Adams, let alone Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, and I think with the coaching change really changed the team philosophy. I think the Jacoby Myers bubble was a Josh McDaniels invention. They really force-fed him the ball, and it was great to see because he was able to do it. But under the new coaching staff, it seems like they want Josh Jacobs to have 100 yards, and they want Devontae Adams to lead in targets. And if those two things are going to be the case, then Jacoby Myers is going to take a back seat again.
Can completely agree. So we have a lineup decision this week for a portfolio team: Deontay Johnson versus Jacoby Myers. Where are you with that?
Well, I think if I remember right, I don't think Deontay Johnson practiced today. I'm not sure if that's a Veterans Day or a serious issue, but certainly something for us to watch.
Also has Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean that's a rough matchup. You at least have the hope that Jalen Ramsey is going to be on Devontae Adams, but it's going to be a high-scoring game from Miami, so they're going to push the Raiders, and they'll just be forced to look elsewhere to the other side of the field. That's kind of the story you're telling yourself, but
right.
It's not a decision you're going to feel good about either way.
Yeah, they're both kind of wide receiver threes this week. Coin flips. One, Jacoby Myers has the better matchup. Deontay Johnson has like the target hog type of mentality going on there, but he also has scored once in 3 years. So it's like, is he ever going to score again? Both quarterbacks kind of stink. So that's the world down there, man. It's the world in the wide receiver 3 kind of area. Is just so many issues with like quarterback play. Man, the scoring's been down this year. And I've always joked, scoring's been down across the league because everyone's hurt. Like all the players are hurt all year. Like we haven't had any catastrophic injuries in a couple of weeks, which is why people are kind of settling down off of it. But like everyone's been hurt. The list goes on and on and on. But also the quarterback play has sucked. Like the marginal quarterback, even like the Jimmy Garoppolo, so you could trust. Like, listen, Jimmy Garoppolo, at least he's going to get the ball to the guys that need to get the ball. His last throw for maybe the rest of his NFL career was a ball 10 yards over Devontae Adams' head that he would have scored an 80-yard touchdown on. You know what I mean? It's like he's just been terrible. The quarterback play has been awful, and the quarterbacks have been hurt. Yeah,
it's kind of the perfect storm in a lot of ways. And I've heard kind of on a macro level, the big trend that we're seeing this year is a consolidation of fantasy points in the wide receiver 1. And I think part of that is due to injuries, like Mike Williams goes out, so now it's Keenan Allen time. Part of it is the poor quarterback play because you're not making it through your progressions. You're focusing on the alpha or bailing on the play. And then I think part of it, I'm not a tape guy. I do not know ball in that way, but I've been told that this is a reaction to the cover 2,
the shell
sort of defensive, right? That when you're in the too high shell or the too high safety, that traditionally one of those that person would be double covering the wide receiver 1, and so by playing back, you're now opening up the door for A.J. Brown to dominate and Devonta Smith to be a little bit more feast famine. Tyreek Hill to consolidate even more of the fantasy points, and Jalen Waddle to not be a 1B, but a true 2. So scoring has been both kind of down, but then also even more concentrated into those real top tier fantasy assets.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. I've heard all that too. We got a start sit question here from Daily Double, John Daily Double here. We got Mario Addison versus Denver, or Rashee Rice versus the horrendous Philly pass defense. Rice would pair with Mahomes. I mean, listen, you already went on your Chiefs rant here.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know. Jerry. Double stack. Come on, Jerry. You late to the show or what? What's going on here?
No. Jerry, that's a problem to have.
Yeah, that's right.
I think. Ooh, that's close.
Yeah, I don't know. Does who's their top corner there in Denver? Does Surtain travel with?
Yeah. Well, yeah, he doesn't shadow, but
I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Yeah,
he'll take the majority of snaps with. So I would be concerned. That's what I was thinking. Patrick Surtain covering him, and then the TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison connection has seemed pretty strong. They've really been force feeding Hawkinson, and I heard that they've actually trained together for several summers. That's like a group of players that train together, and TJ Hawkinson and Josh Dobbs, prior to even this season and meeting each other, have been playing together for several summers. So there might be some chemistry there. I'm leaning Rice. I think it might be I think it might be a bit contrarian when you look at like the median rankings that are going to come out from a lot of people. But my gut says Rice. But I don't think it's going to be a bad situation either way. The one area that Addison has struggled with too. Sorry, I just things keep popping up.
Yeah.
Is that press coverage? He's not a very physical wide receiver, and so when he gets disrupted on it right near the line, that's been a problem for him. And Patrick Surtain is a very physical corner. So I'm gonna lean Rice.
Yeah, me too. I like the matchup with Philly, the shootout potential with Philly. And like I think they're gonna have to throw the ball to keep up with them for sure. So I definitely like that. What time is that game? Philly Chiefs, is that a primetime game? Is that Sunday night? That's got to be. That better not be.
It has to be.
Better not be a 1 o'clock start. We got to look into that. I gotta be up all night watching that thing. But they blew the
Monday night.
Let's go. That's what I need.
There you go.
That's what everybody needs. I love that. Because they blew the other game, that freaking Chiefs Dolphins. They got in the middle of Eastern Europe over there. That game was terrible. Like no one's scoring points. The
Bhutan Invitational or what? Yeah.
That's right. But yeah,
they're also tired by the time they get over there. They play crappy football. And
yeah, so stupid. That's how all those European games have been, man. They're early in the morning, and I mean early morning for us, obviously, but the time change. We do have one decision. We'll kind of talk this through as before we get off the pod here, but we do have a decision that we can talk about. Maybe you've already made up your mind. Fine, wonderful. But I think it's something we can talk about. Maybe other people have the same problem too. In our big FFWC top 10 team here, we've got CJ Stroud versus Kyler Murray. I see right now we have Stroud in the starting lineup. Wonderful. He's been great. They play each other 1 o'clock on Sunday. You've obviously been in control of this team. I defer to you. Are you set on that? If so, why, for our listeners and viewers?
I'm open to persuasion, but I lean Stroud on this. Just I think this is one of those. The man's got momentum, and I don't want to interrupt him. I don't want to throw off his juju in that way. We've just seen big things. He's getting Collins back. I think Arizona is a great case of one of those teams that's just good enough to push you, but not good enough to win. I think Kyler's actually probably the safer play in a way because you've got the rushing floor that you can count on. There have been a couple games where Stroud has really underperformed, and only a few recently that he's really exploded, but those explosions have been huge. So I lean Stroud because I lean the upside, and I think the floor of Stroud is not so unreasonable that I'm gonna run to the floor of Kyler, but I actually think Kyler's probably the safer play.
Yeah, the rushing upside helps. I think for a matchup like this, it really depends on. It might depend on your scoring format. Like I know, is it a yardage league? Is it a 6 touchdowns for a passing league? Because I know like Stroud could go for. I mean, the Cardinals are 28th as far as pass defense for fantasy quarterbacks. Like they're you can feast on them. Houston's at home. They don't have like this amazing run game that they can lean on. Like I think he could throw for so many yards. The touchdowns might not be there in like huge bunches, but man, Noah Brown has looked really good, right? He's a young receiver, physical talent, like 6'2", runs like the wind. Nico Collins is awesome. Tank Dell is awesome. Like Look, I think the yards could certainly be there. Where Kyler, I think, can close the gap is the rushing floor and the rushing scores that he might be able to put up because they like to run him a lot from inside the 5. So my gut also leans CJ Stroud also because, like you said, he's just been so good. The vibe right there right now is awesome. People are talking about as an MVP candidate. He's at home with a beautiful matchup. Like you just think that like even if it goes bad, I don't think it can go that bad. And so, I mean, he's even clicking with the tight end. I mean, who would have thought, we would have had this. I mean, it's just crazy that Dalton Schultz, it was just a 5-yard out route every play in Dallas is just all over the field. He's just been great.
Yeah, you can't argue with it. And who would have thought, that things you don't expect to say in week 10, week 11 of the fantasy football season, but Noah Brown is going to lead us to success. But it's happening. So I'm not going to argue with the results.
I think he's top 5 in the league, maybe top 10 in 20-yard catches. Like the guy's he's a deep threat. Nico Collins is I mean, and Nico's not like a come out of nowhere guy. He's a guy that's gotten better every single year. You kind of saw this coming. I know we were very high on him. I think we took him in a draft we did together, or at least we were targeting him. 6'3" outside guy, runs the slant route as good as anybody. Like he looks like kind of like a young Michael Thomas. Like I think he's a perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it sounds like blasphemous to say this out loud, but when I was watching the Texans last week, Noah Brown in particular, those catches, like, is this a Travis Fulgham? Is this fluky or something? Those catches reminded me of A.J. Brown. Like, they were not easy. This was not somebody blew coverage and you're not going to be able to count on this again. He ran through people.
I know.
He took the hard way. And so that's what, gives me that little glimmer of hope that this is not a Travis Fulgham, but that this is somebody that just did not have the opportunity to play this role before, was, behind Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, certainly, tough competition, but now he's grown and has the opportunity. He's making the most of it.
Listen, I swear Travis Fulgham could have been Puka Nacua if they would have kept feeding him 15 targets a game. Okay. If they
you are into conspiracy theories.
Has anyone seen him in the same room together? I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he is Puka Nacua.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
All right. One last start-sit question we got from Chandler. Joe Burrow tomorrow on Thursday Night Football against the insane Ravens defense, or Justin Fields in his first week back against Detroit. What are your vibes there? I got them very close, almost like side by side, basically in rankings and projections. Fields has a really nice matchup against Detroit. Detroit's 27th, and Baltimore's number 1. Fields has the rushing upside. Fields is in a dome in Detroit, whereas Burrow's at Baltimore on a Thursday night game. Higgins is probably out again. Yes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Yeah. I personally would lean Fields. I know it's his first game back, but you see what he can do with his legs. And I just lean that with that nice matchup, and probably they're going to be chasing Detroit the entire game.
Yeah, I agree with you. That Baltimore defense is scary in real life and scary in fantasy. Like they are shutting down everybody. And Joe Burrow's been good, not great. Like he certainly had some upside games, but even against Houston last week, not necessarily the performance we'd expect to see from Joe Burrow after last season. So I have real concerns against Baltimore, and those divisional games are always tough, and they're always fluky, and they scheme up things specifically for them all year. So I try to stay away from those when possible. Now Bears, Lions have the same thing, but it just seems like different stakes. Like I don't feel like they'd bring back Fields if he wasn't ready to go, because they're just fine losing with Tyson Bagent. That's just fine. I think the Lions are on the up and up, and are going to push them. But I can see between the rushing upside and the deep bombs to DJ Moore, I like that story a whole lot better. It'll be a severe sweat if I'm starting Joe Burrow in Baltimore, which I am. in a couple situations where I have to. But
because it's a good problem because a lot of us don't have Burrow and Fields on teams, So
I'll take Fields and the safety of that floor.
Yeah, I completely agree. For sure. And another quarterback I really like this week. Another kind of matchup where they're going against each other, divisional kind of rivalries. I like the Geno versus Stafford matchup this week. I like them. Like Stafford's back, coming off of a bye. He's been off a couple weeks, I know, but they're coming off a bye. I like him to get going again with Cooper Kupp again. I know we won't have Kyron back, but we'll have. I think that'll be like a little mini shootout there. It's in LA, so better weather. I think those two kind of, Geno Smith's coming off a big game. I think they could kind of go back and forth there with all those weapons. I would rather attack that game from a quarterback perspective than Joe Burrow in Baltimore. Listen, I get the whole the Browns came back last week and all that, but Deshaun Watson's career might be over after that game. Like that's what it took. That's what it took to get that win. So yeah, I would lean heavily away from Burrow if I could this week, if I had other options, obviously, and that's just because Higgins is out too. Like that has a lot to do with it. Like if Higgins was playing, it's a whole different story. That offense is insane, but you're trading out Higgins, you're getting Irwin. Like I love Irwin. I love Trent Irwin as much as everybody. I always pick up Irwin when Higgins is out, but he's no T Higgins for sure.
Yeah, and if you were one of the people like Adam who picked up Trenton Irwin and didn't start him last week on some teams, this is not. I don't think this is the week to start him.
Against Baltimore, right?
Yes, he's got the wide receiver 2 position sewn up. He'll have volume, but that's one of the. Go for talent. Go for better matchup. I think both of those are lacking. So that's a volume play that just has bust written all over it.
That's right. Irwin is Jake Bobo light. Okay, he's the wannabe Jake Bobo.
Walmart Bobo.
Walmart, our future FFWC champion, Jake Bobo with the schedule in the playoffs. But awesome, Jack. Great show tonight. Covered a ton of stuff here. Start sit questions. Thanks everyone for jumping in the chat and asking us your trade questions, your start sit questions. Love it. Good luck to everybody this week, and we'll see you next Wednesday night. See you guys.